Do you think your house is haunted?
100% this house is haunted. This used to be the casket lift. Through the glass doors over there was the embalming room. Ichabod is a skeleton, real human skeleton. We went down into the basement and found what we call a body box.
So life is a cycle. At first, we're born. And then we die. Around 60 million people die every single year. And as a population, death is something that we are super fascinated with and always have a ton of questions. Are ghosts real? Is there an afterlife? Really, what happens when we die? And while I don't think we're any closer to getting the answers to those questions, I do know that for most people, your physical body will make one last pit stop before being put to rest. Funeral homes have been around a long time, and usually as a final farewell to loved ones, it's safe to say a lot of death has come through the doors. So what happens when a building designed to accommodate death gets some new life breathed into it? What happens when a funeral home gets converted into a family home? Well, let's find out. Hi, my name is Simona, and welcome to the first episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. This is a new series I'm starting where I tour super strange, unique, yet beautiful houses that take you from the real world and transport you to Wonderland. Is that cheesy? Yes. Is that what we're going with? Absolutely. So like I said, this is the first episode and we are starting off with a bang. We took a tour of a place I never seen before, and I truthfully didn't even know these kinds of properties existed. It was literally a fully operational funeral home for over 100 years. And then it has now been transformed into this ginormous mansion that we are taking a tour of today. So how did I end up touring an old funeral home? Long story short, it went a little something like this. So my colleague Mark, say hi Mark. Mark is a mortgage broker that I work with, and the Blumbergs, which we'll get to in a second, were some of his clients. So essentially, I just walked into the office and...
Hey, you want to come to our funeral home?
Yeah, that's basically how it happened. So you're probably thinking, how can someone just buy a funeral home? And you're probably also thinking, who is the type of person that would buy a funeral home? Not only buy a funeral home, but buy a funeral home with the intention of renovating to live in it full-time with their family. Well, let me introduce you to the Blumbergs.
Our family is... we're a bunch of weirdos.
So in 2019, Heather and Aaron Blumberg saw a news article online for an Ontario mansion for sale for $600,000. However, there was obviously a catch. That $600,000 mansion was an old funeral home. So the house was built in 1871 and had been operating as a funeral home ever since. So even with the price, it was a tough sell for most people. So the funeral home was decommissioned in 2016 after the previous owners had retired, and then it just sat empty. It was super run down and still had a lot of things inside it that would make people cringe. Honestly, most people would have just torn it down and then built something on the land, but not the Blumbergs. So let me tell you, Heather Blumberg is an interior design genius. And what she has done with the space is truly a work of art. So they have completely renovated the space almost top to bottom. It's not done yet, you will see shortly, but it is phenomenal, to say the least. Like, it is one of the most beautiful houses I have ever been inside. I fear that I will never see something that great again in my life, but that's a whole other story. Their efforts for doing the initial renovation was actually documented in a TV show on Discovery Plus called We Bought a Funeral Home. So obviously we're taking a look at the finished renovations today and the finished parts of the home, but there are still portions of this house that have not yet been touched or renovated. So Heather, who let me tell you is one of the most bubbly, amazing, and nice people that I've ever met, is still doing a ton of renovations, and she's documenting most of that process on her TikTok. There's actually a room in this tour, I'll highlight it when we go through, that wasn't completed when I was there, but has since been redone. And the fun part of all this, and how I honestly believe that life gets you to the right path you're supposed to be on, Heather used to work a super corporate job and now is a full-time interior designer. As she should be, because as I said, she is an interior designing genius. But honestly, that's enough for me. Everybody wants to see the home tour anyways. I'll give you little bits of information as we go through it, and let's get started. So yep, hi, it's me again, and let me start by officially walking you into the Blumbergs home so we can start our tour and taking a look around. We're currently walking in through the front door and into their foyer. So something to keep in mind as we flow through each space of this manor is that every room, wing, and honestly sometimes every corner of this house has its own distinct personality and style. By all accounts, these rooms and the way they're decorated shouldn't work together, but they do, and they do so well. So I had to start by asking Heather just how she came up with all of the decorating ideas and how she was able to make each space seamlessly flow from one into the next.
So when designing the entranceway to the house, I've got a very, if I'm honest, Shining inspired entranceway and foyer. And I somehow had to transition from that style through to my enchanted forest. So I decided to build this hallway of trees, and because I'm just a complete sucker for butterflies, thought it'd be a great idea to put in real butterflies, which meant I needed trees and leaves. And so for some crazy reason, I spent nearly a month individually gluing onto branches little leaves and butterflies. Worth it. Now, a year ago, I was out of my mind.
And as you can see, this enchanted forest theme carries all the way up to the top of the staircase and partway into the second floor as well.
Honestly, I can't even remember how I came up with the idea that I wanted a mural. I knew I needed something very grand for this, and I wanted something whimsical. So I came up with this idea of building this enchanted forest, and we have taxidermy owls flying around it, more of the butterflies, that kind of thing. Bizarrely, when we moved to Dresden, literally we moved next door to the most amazing artist, Sarah Steele. By chance, got to know her and said, hey, can you do me a mural? Gave her some vague ideas of what I wanted. She created this. I then decided to bring it alive and make it 3D with the trees and the flowers, the butterflies and everything. And then top it all off, managed to find from a set, from Chucky, in fact, this amazing chandelier that is the stuff of dreams for $75 because I'm super cheap. So when we first came to see the house, we went down into the basement and found what we call a body box. And it's actually what bodies are transported in when you die overseas and your body needs to be shipped. So this was in the basement on the floor. There are actually rules about how you dispose of this because it has literal body juices in it. So we really felt quite strongly, I keep saying I felt quite strongly that we couldn't just throw it out, that we should be respectful. So I decided to frame it. And when we made the show, we did actually reach out to the son of the gentleman who's named on this box. And apparently he said that his father would think this was absolutely hilarious and get a real kick out of it. So Kingsley is forever with us.
And what is that behind you?
So this is really cool. So come meet Ichabod. Ichabod is a skeleton, real human skeleton. He was used as a teaching aid. So the earliest paperwork I think that could be found on him was about 1870. A viewer of the show, whose name is April Slaughter, real name, and offered us Ichabod to rehome him. So he was across the border. I'm in Canada. Ichabod was in the US. We couldn't get him shipped because he's a body and I don't have the right paperwork. So I ended up doing this harebrained road trip from basically Toronto through to Salt Lake City and had some interesting experiences coming back through the Hoover Dam and suddenly realizing that that's a military base and they needed to look in my truck and discover body parts. It really pays to have a British accent and sense of humour when you're confronted with the military like that. But anyway, that's a long story. All to say he's home, safe and sound, and we have him here now. And yes, I talk to him every morning when I get up and every night when I go to bed.
So we've already seen so much and we're actually barely even in the house. Here, we're now on our way towards the family room and the kitchen. And as we go through there, we have to make our way through this parlor. The bones of this room are super beautiful, but the decor is what really takes it to the next level. You have so much fun, creepy, and unique trinkets on the shelves and the floors. and almost everything here has a backstory.
This is an opera robe. It's from the Peking Opera. It was used on stage between about 1910 and 1920. I actually bought it from an auction where a magician, unfortunately, had passed on and his entire estate was for sale.
This room also houses the first floor powder room, which again has a whole new theme itself just behind the door. The best part of this room has to be just how many secret little compartments there are. But my favorite secret in this room is actually right here, and let me get Heather to show you how it works.
I bought a funeral home, big old mansion. It needs to have secret doorways and passageways. So I was very passionate about the first project, putting in my secret doorway. This space, we call it the Black Rooms. It actually used to be the chapel, unsurprisingly, where they held the funeral services. So there's about 1,200 square feet all in all that we have converted from what was a very relaxing pink and blue into our family room, our dining room and our kitchen. It's huge space, and I was adamant that I was going to do it all black. These came out of an old theatre in Ottawa in Canada. They were tearing down the theatre, I think it was called St. Mark's, and all the chairs were being thrown out. And I don't know, I just think they're absolutely beautiful and they're part of Canadian history, so they needed to be kept and respected.
This kitchen is definitely one of the most elegant, chic, and timeless kitchens I have ever seen, and if you love to cook, this place is a dream. Now, what you may or may not notice, just because of how well designed this space is just how ginormous this room actually is.
When I designed this kitchen, scale was one of the prime things I had to consider. Obviously, the island is absolutely huge. This is, we call it the continent, not the island, because it's nearly 10 by 10 feet. But when you're sort of designing a space that is 1,000 square feet, you've got to make sure that you don't put in anything that's too small. It's also where we spend virtually all of our time as a family. We love to cook, we love to eat, we love to drink. We had all of our dream appliances put in, so we do cook a lot. So we've got the gas stove, gas range, I think as you would call it here. We used an induction top as well, so that we could have dual cooks going. The induction stove is actually something we use way more than we ever anticipated. Everything about this kitchen is, it's all at one level. Work surface is usually about 36 inches. We built up an extra 3 inches to 39, so it's a little more comfortable as you work on it. To offset the simplicity in what could almost be austere kitchen, one colour, very angular, is I brought in my glam. So huge chandeliers over the island and the dining room table, super glitzy, very warm light. And really that's all you see. I'm looking at it now, I'm getting distracted. It's all you see. And it's also a bargain. So my whole thing when I do this house, because it's a huge house, is everything that I'm getting is auctions, found at the side of the road, reconditioned, so that I can actually afford to do it.
So as I mentioned, Heather has since become an interior designer, and part of her home now acts as a workshop of sorts as well as a storefront for her business. We're gonna go head down and check it out now, and there are so many unique and fun pieces in this room. I wish I had time to show you all of them.
It's part of the garages of the house. We had 3 garages. I've actually converted 2 of them into an interior design store. On the success of our show, or our first show, I should say, I've been asked to get involved with doing interior design for clients. I've created this store, which is a complete mess right now. This is where clients come in. I do bespoke sourcing services as well. So every piece that's in here, bar maybe 2 or 3, is actually going to go out to someone's home. I will either design or style their space for them. And then anything and everything that you see in here comes from auctions, comes from overseas vendors. We do a lot with, we have friends that we source from pieces from Morocco and places like that. So maybe not the run-of-the-mill that you would usually find.
And also, just how fun Heather and her family have 3 massive dogs, and look at their doghouse. Like I said, every corner has its own personality. All right, let me take you up now to the 2nd floor of this house. And here we'll find a guest bedroom as well as Heather and her husband Aaron's primary bedroom.
This room is called the hanging room, and exactly for the reason that you think it is. This is one of the guest rooms that I've done, currently used as a bit of an office. The walls, I was hoping to find, you know, beautiful old Victorian wallpaper when I started stripping them. I didn't. I found the walls in this state, but I loved the way they looked, so sort of distressed. So I just sealed the walls up, added some copper leaf, and this is what we've got, and personally I think it's beautiful. The reason why we call it the hanging room is unfortunately a gentleman did hang himself in this room decades and decades ago, which we didn't know. We only found out when we being my daughter and I, were out in town one day. A man stopped us and said, "Oh God, do you know the story about, you know, what happened in your house?" And we get that a lot. And so we said no, and next thing we know, we're hearing all about the poor unfortunate man that hung himself in this room, apparently from that light.
Do you think your house is haunted?
100% this house is haunted. We have footsteps, doors opening and closing.
Do you have whispers?
We have whispers.
I swear to God, like, because I heard whispers when I was in the pink room, and then I was walking through. Got chills.
Yeah, the pink room is actually above the old basement, and those 2 rooms have constant activity. We actually see people walking around.
And I think this is a good point to mention that aside from the funeral services and the dead bodies that would obviously come through in that capacity, 28 separate people have actually died inside the house that the family knows of so far. So essentially, here's what happened. I was in this room filming a video for my TikTok, and I thought I heard someone whispering behind me. It was like they were trying to talk to me very, very quietly, but from the other side of the room, so I actually couldn't make out anything they were saying, but it distinctly sounded like someone was whispering. And I actually thought it was my boyfriend who was helping me film that day, so I just called out. I asked him, I said, "Hey, like, where are you?" Thinking he was just gonna be on the other side of the door. Turns out he was in a completely different part of the house. I'll add the footage in here now. I feel like I can still hear the whispering in there, but you let me know. Take a look. Where are you? Oh, that's so weird.
Well, to make it really bad, they actually touch you a lot as well. There's one in the pink room that strokes hair, really likes to stroke hair.
We're checking out Heather's room now, and again, another unique and fun space. Heather actually designed and built this star decal on the ceiling all by herself. She said it was one of the worst experiences of her life, but we have to appreciate it because it is so, so beautiful. And Heather's room is actually connected to my favorite room in the entire house, which is her ensuite bathroom.
This is my bathroom. It used to be 2 bedrooms. When I designed this bathroom, I chose a tile and a feel so it would almost feel like a mausoleum because, yes, I am that person. But I didn't want the eye line spoiled. So I actually came up with this idea of using TV stands to bring the mirrors up so they would come up and down but never ruin your eye line.
Alright, so now we're heading up to the 3rd and final floor. There are 3 floors total in this house, and not to mention an absolutely massive basement, which we'll check out later. This room here is the guest room, and while I was filming, it wasn't completed, but has since been completely redone and transformed, and if you want to see what it looks like now, I'll leave a link to Heather's TikTok in the description because she documented the whole design. So most of the 3rd floor is actually dedicated to Heather and Aaron's daughter, Noah's bedroom. But honestly, calling this space a bedroom might feel like the wrong word to use because Noah and Heather's son Rafferty's bedrooms more feel like mini apartments than anything else because they are so big. This room has its own study nook, a living room, perfect for letting her have some privacy when hanging out with her friends. And then her actual bedroom is like stepping into a fantasy realm. Themed slightly after Alice in Wonderland, this room is so whimsical, unique, and fun. And again, just to showcase that no detail was forgotten, no matter how small of a space, take a look at the toilet. So while Noah's room is on the top floor of the house, Rafferty's room is as far away as you can get, and it's actually in the basement. You can see that both these spaces have so much character and very different style choices. And when talking to Heather, she said that her kids really helped in designing their own rooms. She even said that if we were to meet them and spend time with our kids, we would see that this space matches their personality perfectly. And as a chronically messy kid myself, I had to ask if their rooms were always this clean or if they were just clean because I was coming. She told me that, believe it or not, this is the state of her kids' room almost constantly. She pointed out that when she was designing this space and having a conversation with her kids in terms of what they wanted to do with their bedrooms, they came to a deal and an understanding. Basically, if you have nice things, those things need to be treated nicely and with respect. And I really wish I had time to show you every single room in this house, but there just isn't enough time in the day. This place was absolutely huge, but I will let you know that in the basement, there are 2 additional guest rooms as well as a full gym. Alright, so we have just a few last stops on this tour, and here is probably the most fun and unique room in the entire house, and that is saying a lot. Because what Heather decided this space really needed was her very own speakeasy. Not only that, but also directly attached to it, a private cigar lounge. One of the most fun ways she's actually tied in the fact that this house used to be an old funeral home is with this bar card right here.
This used to be the casket lift. So over here is the garage. Above us is a viewing room, and above that is an overflow room where you could also embalm and store caskets and that sort of thing. We very first visited the house. I took one look at this casket lift and decided that it should be a travelling bar.
And how did you get to that conclusion?
Because I'm an alcoholic. We don't want to turn this into a theme park house, obviously, but it was a funeral home for 110 years. We, wanted to have some fun with it. So I decided that this should be a bar, and then I decided, well, it was a casket lift, so we need to put a casket on it. So we went to a local funeral home, bought a casket from them, which disturbed them a little bit. And so I designed the whole thing around it. Broke open the casket, mounted it on steel, and it's a little run down at the moment, but usually it's a little more stocked.
It's well loved.
It's well loved, and again, convenience. It goes to every floor. It's a big house. It's too far to walk everywhere. Here was storage and mechanical. Through the glass doors over there was the embalming room. So let's go to the embalming room. So this was the embalming room, and I need you to keep that in your mind at all times. Aaron was in here when we very first moved in. Because this had the plumbing in it, running water, we put the washing machine and tumble dryer in here. There was old cabinetry in here. Aaron was, I don't know what he was doing in here, changing washing. And I was starting to pull up carpet just down the corridor. And one day he screamed for me to come in. I came running through thinking I was going to see something broken or I don't know what. And he said that he'd been looking behind the cabinetry trying to find something to work, and something fell on him. And again, this is the embalming room. Please remember this when I show you what came out and he found in the cabinets.
That is so terrible.
It's so terrible. The thing is, once you know it, you can't, you just, yeah. So, yeah, this was in the embalming room where Granny was brought to be made good. We have a lot of fun with the house. I have a very strong design idea, but we want to respect what the house has used is for decades. As much as I can in this house, if it's original to the house, it stays. If it is sort of infrastructure, meaning flooring, doors, trim, casing, windows, if they were taken out in the 90s, I model them based on photographs and anything original in the house and bring it back. I think it's important to honour what it was.
So this was never the original plan. You were not an interior designer. You had never remodeled a whole home before. What happened?
So, I mean, I'd done bits and pieces over the homes that we'd had for years. But when we bought this place, the vision was so strong of what I could do with it. I wasn't going to trust it to anybody else. And honestly, then getting a TV show and suddenly having different resources than what we would usually have, it's one of those bizarre life things. It all just fell into place and so far continues to do so. We did not plan on buying a funeral home at all. It never was on our wish list. We lived in Toronto, right downtown, had a beautiful house there, all white, if you can believe that. And it was the middle of the pandemic. And we saw an article about cashing out of the city and buying a mansion. So we decided that we would come see this house with no intention of moving. We're almost 3 hours outside of Toronto. And we walked in the back door, walked through the garages into what is now our kitchen, and literally looked at each other and we're like, we're buying this house.
And how does it feel knowing that many people in the town have been inside your house, but in a different kind of capacity?
It's a hard one because it is our home now, but people have a lot of memories of it and a lot of emotional attachment to it. So we do try to be respectful of it. Having said that, literally every single person you meet has a very strong opinion on what you're doing. By and large, everybody has been super supportive because the house sat empty for 5-6 years and would have fallen apart in the end if someone hadn't bought it. And we have bought it to turn it back into a family home. So I think most people are very, very pleased about that. There's some people that are a little scandalized that we would live in an old funeral home and that, you know, we do what they see as outrageous decor and things with it and, you know, making entertainment out of it with a TV show. But honestly, they're so few and far between that you can't make everybody happy.
Thank you guys so much for watching the very first episode of Down the Rabbit Home. There are more to come, and we have already filmed episode 2. So if you don't want to miss that and more content from me, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok for more behind the scenes, as well as some amazing home tours. And additionally, I have left all of Heather's social media down below in the description box, so don't forget to go follow her and make sure to say hello from me. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you very, very soon.